Welcome again to Identity Manager version 7 bits. In this video we want to talk about key IT shop features. Please remember, in the past we talked about standard web portal features and what's new in the standard web portal. In this specific video we want to talk about some changes in the data structure of the IT shop according to approval processes and decisions. Have fun with that video now. Beside the fact that we have heavily overworked the complete standard web portal, the new layout looks completely fresh and clean, and we have a lot of new features in the standard web portal. We have talked about that in one of our former sessions here. I want to talk about 3 key features exist now in the IT shop data structure. The first of all is the justification. Justification was implemented to empower approvers to select standard answers for an approval or a denial directly from a drop-down box. Reason behind that is that in the past, every time when an approver was denying something, he was as well forced to add a comment in a specific field so that people who request for something get the message why something was denied instead of approved. In many situations, a lot of these answers are just standard answers, so approvers was as well forced to type in every time the same message again and again. We implemented in the past a feature that was allowing approvers just to select a couple of decisions at once and to type in a message once, but at the end it was always necessary to type something into a box. Now, with the justification feature, you can step into the manager, and in the manager you can just configure a couple of standard answers for approvals or denials. And these standard answers later on can be selected during the decision process from a drop-down box and can speed up the complete decision process. The feature itself, it's just an add-on to the existing feature, which means you are as well able to type in your decision message if you like it. But for all people who don't want to type in something and they are happy with a standard answer, they can now select the standard answer directly from a list. A completely different scenario is the feature we have implemented to move pending decision processes to other people if, for example, decision makers leave the company or are not available for a longer period of time. This is a feature we have implemented especially because our customers was asking many times for it. But to be honest, from a clean decision perspective, it is a dangerous feature, and so it is very important that if you try to implement or activate that feature, that you plan this very properly. I think it makes sense first to talk about the use case. In this use case, the feature supports, we talk about decision makers who will leave their position for whatever else reason. Maybe they are for a long time sick, or maybe they just leave their position, leave the company or something else. At the end, there is a decision position that is included in approval processes, and unfortunately it is not configured with any approver. In the old product, if that happens, the approval process was just cancelled by the system and the user was informed that this approval was not able to be made, and because of that, the complete process was stopped. A bit more problematic was a decision process that was just hanging on a specific position where a left approver was configured, and because of the data situation, the system was not knowing about this leaving approver, and a decision maker was configured, exactly the leaving person, that was not in the company anymore. In these specific cases, approval processes was just sitting in the queue and waiting on a decision of a person that was not in the company anymore. The correct solution for that problem always is just to move out the approver, and before you do that, to move in the new approver, which is now responsible for that specific decision. For whatever reason, this often generates problems, and that was the reason why our customers started to asking us why we are not able to implement some, I will say, super approver groups. There are companies in the world where a specific group of people, very often here the group of supporters, are at the end able to overrule an approval in a way that they can do the approval if there is no approver available. Again, from a clean approval perspective, if such a chief approver group exists, normally They will make the complete approval process obsolete, especially because why I should have a 5-level approval if supporters can approve everything? Nevertheless, it is something customers want to get implemented. And because of that, we have done this in version 7. There is now for attestation and IT shop a chief approver group, which is able to approve everything if they try to do it. To ensure that this kind of approval is not too easy for these people, they have their own dialog in the standard web. First of all, they will not get notifications about something that is to approve. This is only for the real decision makers. These people have to step to a specific part of their web form. They have to search for a very specific approval process, and if this approval process is identified, then they are able to approve something. Again, this group of people is empowered to approve everything. So it has to be organizatorically managed that these people will not violate permissions in the company. From my perspective, a better way to get that handled, it's the second option, and this second option are the fallback approvers. On an approval step level, you can now configure a specific group of people, and this specific group of people always gets asked if, for whatever reason, the real approvers are not configured for a specific step, or the number of real approvers is less than the needed number of approvers. For example, in a 4-eyes approval, if there is only one approver configured, it will be not possible to approve the complete step, but if there is as well a fallback approver group configured, there will be the fallback approver group notified if there are not enough approvers in the real approver group. It is better because it has to be configured on each step level, so there is no global chief approver group who can approve everything, and these people are only able to approve if, in whatever circumstances, the real approvers cannot do their work. Last but not least, the feature of reinforced authentication. This is a feature which is not implemented into the standard web portal, but it is available for the web portal, and this feature prompts a logged-in user just to re-log in again with his or other credentials. This feature can be helpful if, for example, there is a decision that kind of important that it makes sense to ensure that this person that is sitting in front of the open screen is exactly that person that is allowed to do the decision. In these cases, in the web portal will prompt you again with a login mask and will tell you, please re-log in again into that to do this specific kind of decision. Please note again that this is a feature which is possible now, but it is nowhere implemented into the standard web portal. First thing to show is the justification in IT shop. Therefore, in the basic configuration data of our IT shop menu, a specific new node called standard reasons was implemented. Underneath of standard reasons exist two filters. There's the predefined filter and the custom defined filter. You can see out of the box there's a couple of predefined standard decisions implemented. I've just selected one of these, for example, exception denied because of policy changes, which is a typical automatic decision, which means it is a predefined text that will be used together with an automated decision. If I just uncheck that box, which is not possible in a standard item, but for all of my edited items I can do that, then I can use it as well for every decision I make as a manager or as a person using the IT web shop. Another checkbox is of interest as well. This is additional text required. Often it is just enough to take one of these predefined texts here, but if, for example, the predefined text is only the beginning of something and I need to add some more information, then I can check that box. Additional text is required, and until I have not edited some text to that pre-selected predefined text, I will be not able to store my decision. At the end, a very nice feature. We are waiting since years for it, and now it's there. We can use it and we will figure out how good it works. The second feature is the feature with the chief approval team. This is here a little bit below. That is the chief approval team. At the end, it is nothing other else than a role. And it is an application role, by the way, and this application role can contain a number of people who are allowed to decide everything. After we discussed chief approval teams, the next step, and from my perspective, the better way to handle the more or less the same problem, is to use the backup approval group. And a backup approval group can configure, as you know, in an approval workflow. And so I just step to the approval workflows, select one of these workflows, and select the master data page. And in the master data page, there I select one of these approval levels and a step in the level and open the form that shows me the level. And what you now can see, and this is new in Identity Manager 7, there is an option that is called Fallback Approver. And in this specific option for fallback approvers, I can configure an AE role. It could be any AE role, but to be honest, I think mostly you will start to create here a role struct underneath of the custom AE roles. It is grayed out right now, and this is because we try to change here a standard approval policy. Standard approval policy cannot be changed, but if I just create a new one and I add a level, and in the level I add as well, for example, an approval procedure, then I'm now as well able to open here the fallback approvers, and you can see here these are my AE roles. And here underneath of custom, I can just create a new role structure on my own. But if this is too complex, then I can as well use any other AE role that exists here as fallback approver, which means the members of this role will then be the fallback approvers. A very nice additional feature in Identity Manager 7 is the capability to create new approval procedures. This is something very specific, and I want to show you that with the help of an example. And it's time again to point you to the manual of the Identity Manager. If you are interested to create approval procedures, then it's always helpful to look into the manual. In this case, IT Shop Administration Guide. And here you will find something that is called Setting Up Approval Procedures. And there it is very nice described how you have to do that and what it's necessary as well on the SQL basis with the help of examples here, what is necessary to do this. Before we can start now with showing that in the front end, it makes sense just to show you or to explain exactly what we want to do. Please remember the past. In the past, it was always the case that if we was creating an approval workflow, that we just took some of these approval procedures and configured them into the workflow. For example, in the first level, there was a department manager approval. In the second level was a line manager approval, whatever. In some seldom cases, especially on very complex customer installations, it was necessary to create some specific steps that was not in the list. For example, I want to configure an approval procedure which delivers the manager of the specific person the request is for. This is not quite easy, and you cannot use a standard process because such a standard process doesn't exist. And in the past, we was always using a specific process step that was named CP, calculated group of people. And here it was necessary to add some SQL into that specific step. One of the, I will say, uncomfortable things was that if that step was needed in 2 or 3 or more approval processes, different approval processes, it was necessary to copy the SQL statement again in the CP step and again in a CP step and again in a CP step. Now in Identity Manager 7, we are able to create new approval procedures and to use them after they are created in many different approval workflows. To start with that, the first thing I want to show you is how to get such a SQL statement. I have prepared something here in the list, and to make that easier to understand, I start at the beginning. First of all, I write a little SQL statement that delivers my line manager. And that works in the following way. Here is the person head, which is the line manager. It is part of my record. And to make it visible, that means to show you the name of the specific line manager, I join as well a second time the person table to that query here. And the second part of the query, which is part of the join here, delivers me the name of my manager. Doing so, I can just execute that. Here we are. I am, that means me, I'm on the right side. My manager is on the left side, and the UID of my manager is on the very left. That's the first level. But I'm not interested in my manager. I'm more interested in the manager of my manager. So what I do here in the second statement is to expand that a bit. First of all, I join a second time now the person table to my person table. Now we have 3 data sets of person table. The original data set, which it's me, which represents me. Then a second set of person data represents my managers, and the third set of data which represents the managers of the managers. Why I need 2 joins here? This is always because I want to have the internal name, which means it's a property of the record set of manager or of my record. The first set represents me. Because of that, my internal name is delivered by the first record set. The second record set represents my manager, so the internal name represents now the manager, and the third of the sets represents at the end the manager of the manager. To be honest, I don't need it that complex for my SQL statement at the end, especially because I'm more interested later on in the UID of the manager, and that could be selected out of the second record set, especially because it is UID person head of the record set of my manager. This is a little bit too complex. I will simplify it later on again, but this statement shows now the whole information we are talking about. On the very right side, that's me. On the left beside, there is the manager that is displayed on the right side. And then there's the manager of the manager in the middle and the UID of this specific manager on the very left side. Now I have to simplify that and have to write that in a way that it can be used in one of these approval procedures. Therefore, it's always good to have a small look into the manual. In the manual, there are some examples showing me how the whole thing works. You see here at the end a select statement. There is a UID person that have to be represented as a UID person. This is here described with that specific UID person after the S. And we need a second parameter, null, which represents at the end the UID of the PVO ruler origin, which is not necessary for a self-made statement, but the column have to exist. With that, I jump back into my SQL tool. And here in the SQL tool, you see a third statement, which is now the statement we are talking about. I have just deleted one of the joins. The reason for that is I don't need the third data set because I get the information I need, which is the UID person head out of the second data set. And then I need this additional column. This is just taken with help of copy and paste from the manual here into that specific statement. The rest is as we have planned it. And the last thing I have to ensure is that the statement itself is focused on the specific record in person1org table where the whole thing have to work against it. And this is as well described in the manual. If I look here a little bit more to the upper, I see I can use here for Microsoft SQL and for Oracle 2 different ways to get the current record identified, the current person1org record identified, which is at the end the mother of all evil here. And I can do that with the help of the variable UID person1org. And to handle that, I add here a where clause into my statement and a second join. The second join goes to person1org. The way to connect person1org to myself is the way as person ordered, which means I am the person where whatever else is ordered is for. And to identify the correct record in person1org, I'm using here the variable and the where clause that says person1org record is equal to a specific one that comes directly out of the process. And with the help of that, the statement is now completely developed. This is something you can test on your own. The only thing what you not can do is here in the SQL now to run the statement, especially because the variable is unknown from the SQL editor, but it is known from the identity manager. And so I copy and paste the whole thing and step into the manager. And in the manager, there is the IT shop section. In the IT subsection subsection basic configuration data, you will find approval procedures. Here they are. It's a new node. If we click on approval procedures, you will see many standard approval procedures. You can just select one. You can see in which approval workflows the step it's used. You can as well jump in and see here some configuration. This is just for the standard. I want to create a new one for the manager of the manager. I made that in the past, so it's already there. And to create that, I hit here on the plus button and get a new one. As mentioned, it's already there, so I just select my new one. You can easily identify it because it is editable. That is only possible for approval procedures. They are custom. Yeah? I have to name them with a specific shortcut, in this case for manager of the manager. I have to add a description. I can as well do some translation stuff. Translation is only possible, by the way, if you have first saved the record. That means I have to type in this information. I have to save the record. I can hit here on the translation button and then I can as well configure this and save it again and it will work. I have to configure the maximum number of approvers. In this specific case, it's always only one person because line manager, it's only a single person. There are no deputies configurable. And I can, if I want to, as well change the sort order, but you can leave it as it is, so that is not really necessary. At the end, after this is configured and the whole thing is stored, I have to click here on Change Query for approval selection. I have to hit here on the Add button and I can define here a section that includes a query. First of all, approver selection, which is just a name that should help you to identify more than one of these queries. And then I can insert here my SQL statement as it was developed before. Some words to more than one of these SQL statements. Add and remove shows you here that there's a capability to insert more of these statements. The reason for that is every of these statements have to be developed in a way that it is just one select statement returning here a null column plus the UID person column that is necessary for approval procedures. What is not possible here is to write here in something like a union all or a union statement with a second select. Therefore are these different entries here. So if I have to have 2 or 3 select statements, all of them are delivering UID person, but for different conditions and out of different tables, then I have to insert here for 3 different statements, 3 different entries, and every entry will contain just one select statement, and at the end the system will union them together with the help of a union. This is what I can do. And after this is done, I can immediately jump to my approval workflows. There we can use that. I can use one of my custom approval workflows, for example, the line manager approval workflow I have created before. I step into the master data page, I get my editor, I can just add a new level. I can say that is the manager of the manager. And now I can select from the list my very new manager of the manager approval procedure. Here it is. And I can configure whatever I want. That is not really necessary right now. I close that and I connect that, for example, here as a second level on my first level that was already there, and I'm done. And you can see I can do that nearly everywhere where I want in approval workflows. And next time I think I have to write that a little bit more accurate so that here additional characters are not really displayed. And with that, you are now informed how to create approval procedures.